Hey, welcome back to my intuitive playlist. This is the 10th video. Today we're diving right in. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of doing this work. Now that we know we are intuitive, now that we know what kind of an intuitive we are, today I'm going to do my code of ethics for doing this work and connecting to higher self. 10 tips, 2 stories. That's coming up next on my channel. Hey, thanks for staying clicked in. We're doing the ethics of doing this work. And if you're someone who's reading people, this video will be for you, but more importantly, if you're developing your higher self, stay watching, because I have some, from doing this work for the last 15 years, it's from my heart right out to anyone who's trying to do this work also. It's the do's and don'ts of what not to do. So let's go. I got 10 tips, 2 stories. Can't wait to share. So the first number 1 thing that I want you to know, number 1 out of the gate, probably the most important, listen to this and go ahead and click out of the video. I don't care, because this is all you need to know. Never give information without being asked. Never. Even if you think you're going to be able to save their life, it is not for you to project on anybody. So always, if somebody's there struggling and you think you have the best solution from you and you're getting a hit from whoever you think it's from, the first thing you must do is ask if you can give some information. Say that, Clay, straight up. I'm hearing what you're saying right now. I'm really feeling led to share something with you. Would you be open to hear what I am getting? That's an invitation, okay? But the point is, never project. Number 1, out of the gate. Let's go. Number 2, nothing intuitive is ever linear. Let me say that again. Nothing intuitive is ever linear. So this goes into, when do you think that will happen? Tell me if I should take the job. Should I stay with my husband? How much longer? Will I win the lottery? That's all guessing, and it's just ridiculous because of this beautiful thing, free will. So if free will is such a beautiful gift from God, and we have free will at every God-given moment, do you think that anyone, including your own connection to higher self, would ever be able to predict time? So nothing intuitive is ever linear. That is number 2. Let's keep going. Number 3, the way we get information in a session, so the way you're getting information is just as important as the information you're getting. And I'm going to give you a bonus story at the end of this. It's the story of 3 little pigs. It's not what you think. You have to wait to the end of the video to hear that. It'll make my point, so I'll table that for a second. But the information you get and the way you get it is just as important as the information. So share that with the person that you're getting the information to. If it's from yourself, pay attention to all the things around that. Let's keep going. In this work, number 4 is we meaning the reader, needs to stay away from projecting and telling and giving information as absolute. There is no absolute in doing this work. We should only guide, suggest. We never tell. Okay, so that is absolutely our responsibility. I always say we give language. If you've worked with me, you've heard me say this. A good reader, the only job of a good reader is to give your energy, your situation, your crisis, your experience, language from higher self. So you should leave totally affirmed. Okay, more to come on that. Number 5, shut down, our responsibility to shut down ask holes. Okay, so now that's not a bad word, by the way. Ask, A-S-K, holes. It sounds bad, but it is a reference to that. It's the people who, become addicted to getting information, feel like they can't make a decision unless they run it through you, because after all, you're guiding them. That's heads up to you. You're not doing your job. If somebody can't move through, I've said this before, my whole series is about me putting myself out of work. It is not my job for someone to rely on me, that's ego, to need to make a decision in life. Our job as a good reader is to push them to be able to make their own decisions. teaching them to connect to higher self. Okay, that's number 5. Moving on, number 6. Information, when you're receiving it or getting it, it should never feel like a punch in the gut. I worked with a woman recently, came in totally in a tailspin. She got on Facebook and somebody gave her some really terrible information because they flipped a card, and it was so absolute, kind of back to my other point. And she was sick about it and showed up to me asking for guidance. And I said that would never be higher self. And so it took 40 minutes of working together for her to totally delete and trash that whole aspect. Forced her to get off the group, let her join our group, whatever, right? That's my point, that information, when it's higher self, will always feel love, warm, supportive, neutral, feels like a hug. If it feels like a punch in the gut, it is not coming from anything divine. Do you agree? Let's move on. Number 7, nobody knows better than the sitter. I'm the reader, the sitter. So what does that mean? I'm not going to get into any type of a tug of war with somebody. If I'm giving information and I say, does that make sense? And they say it means no sense. Okay, or does that resonate with you or line up with you, or do you agree with that? And if that person in front of me says no, then I tell them, then let it go. I never force anybody because you've perceived or said it, or it came from you when you're reading and you're caught on ego and you believe it's for their benefit. Now they might hear it differently later, which is why I like recording my sessions, but even at that time, if they don't hear that, it's not time. They're not supposed to hear it. So let it go. Do you agree? Let's keep going. Number 8, there is absolutely no room. I don't care how big your room is that you're doing this work in. There is no room in this work for your ego. None. So Control Alt Delete your ego in a session. And I will kind of make reference to this. It is so much easier to read a stranger off the street, to meet someone on the bus and give them great guidance, right? After I'm asked, right? Than it is to work closely with my sisters or a best friend, because I do have to work. You have to work so much harder to filter out the knowing. And if you've worked with me, you've probably heard me say that. Hold on, I got to spend a little time in what I know, and I have to dump that in order to get to that higher self or the message from your guides. So there's no room in that room, no matter how big the room is, for your ego. Let's keep going. 2 more. 2 stories. Stay watching. Stay away from influenced information. So what does that mean? If you know you have a session with somebody and someone else knows that, and let's say they talk and, oh, I understand you're working with so-and-so, or you know her too, and somebody starts to give you information, put your hand up quickly and say, oops, so I'm sorry, I'm in the process of getting ready to work with that person. I would appreciate you telling me nothing. You don't go looking, because you've got to filter, and if you're being genuine, you're doing this work, you're not looking for any of it. In fact, you're shutting it down. And as you know from working with me, if someone comes to me and they say, and I ask, have you ever had a session? It's one of the first questions I ask. And they say yes. And then they start to tell me what happened in another reading that they did. I quickly put up my hand and say, please don't tell me anything until the end if you'd like to share, so that if you hear it again, it's affirmation. That's what I mean by being careful not to be influenced by outside information. Okay, let's keep going. Number 10, it is our responsibility to filter. And what does that mean? I told you earlier, it's important how you get the information. That's not this. What I'm saying when I say it's our responsibility to filter is it's really important that it's got to be love. It's got to be through the gates of love. It's got to be through the gates of service. It's got to be through, all that has to be cleaned up to give it to the person. Even if you think it's part of the way you're receiving it, if it doesn't feel like it honors them, or it's the answering the question that they're really looking for, if it's just garbage, it's your job to throw it out, okay? So I might get a little controversy there in conversation. Seems like I've contradicted myself. Hopefully you know what I mean. So to make my point, I'm going to start sharing. I have 2 stories. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video today. Really curious, do you have a comment? Did you like it? Does it connect to you? Let me know in a comment below. And also, don't forget that beautiful little subscriber button and the bell tells you when I put up a new video. It's really my way of staying connected to you. Let's get back to the video now. I was training in the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. Raymond R. Moody, Brian Weiss, Sonia Chiquette, I think, was there. It was a whole life after life, life after death conference. And there was a woman who I had trained there a couple other times, and she was always there. So she was seeking knowledge and wisdom and learning like I was. And she didn't remember me. So we were in one of our little workout sessions. We ended up working together, and she was telling me that she was in training to be a medium and really wanted to do this work. So we connected through that. And in the middle of our little chat together, she raises up her hand and she goes, "Oh yes, I remember you now." And she says, "I remember you have a little girl." And as she did that, she covered her hand and she says, I'm seeing blunt trauma to the head." Now, when she said that, I quickly realized what she was doing, because I had told her nothing about my daughter and what had happened, just that I had lost a child. So when she started to give me that information, I quickly grabbed onto her hand, and her eyes were closed, and had to say, "Ho, hey, wait a minute." It's just she opens her eyes, and I said, "No, say nothing more. I didn't ask you. That you've crossed a line with me. That's not the information I want to hear. That's not important to me. You're done." And I shut her quickly down, okay? And you know what my point is there. It is our responsibility to filter. That girl had no filters, and if she thought in that moment that that would be good information, back to the other point I made earlier, not only the way she was getting information, right? That's all part of it. It's our job to filter. That's my story. Okay. So let me set this up. There were two women working together at a Brian Weiss past life regression conference that I went to. And the instructions from Brian Weiss, if you don't know who he is, Many Lives, Many Masters, so many amazing books. I'll put up a little tag here in my cards for Brian Weiss and his books. His instructions were to, switch over, like give a watch or a ring, give some piece of thing that you had to the other person, and then play intuitively. Just see what you get, hold the item and let you know. And then he would give 3 to 5 minutes, and then he would ask you to switch, and you would do it for each other. So everyone was off in little couples doing this. So these two women were working together, and so here's what happened. The first woman she takes the watch, and evidently it was the watch of this woman, and she sees this beautiful scene of the curtain window in the kitchen, and she looks out the kitchen and she's describing this memory bench that got placed with the flowers, describing the flowers that were in the garden. She can see the curtains and the paisley print and the wallpaper. I mean, the woman gave so much detail holding this woman's watch, okay? And went on to tell her all this when they came out of their session. Of course, the woman, when she told her all the detail, was just crying. She had lost her son. They had planted a bench with the garden, and she described the curtains, and that's my kitchen. I stand there often looking out that window and thinking of him. It was just this beautiful thing. So now it was time for them to do the other side, right? So when it was the other woman's turn, she had a ring, to do the same thing, she closed her eyes, and of course, what does she see? The 3 little pigs. She thought to herself, "Oh, don't do this. This is the way she told the story. Oh, come on, this woman just did this amazing thing for me, and you're showing me 3 little pigs." She got in her head, her ego, and went back in and tried to look, and sure enough, again, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. She kept seeing, straw, brick, everything to do, animated. Not just the 3 little pigs, but animation. So she came back, and of course, there they are having this exchange together, and the woman goes, "Well, what'd you get?" And she says, "Oh, I don't want to tell you." and you know, after everything you did for me, I can't even tell you. And the woman says, no, come on, you know, Brian just told us to give whatever you got. And she says, well, all I saw was the 3 little pigs. And I'm embarrassed to tell you, but that's all that showed up. And every time I tried to push it away, it just kept coming back stronger. And worse than that, I saw it in complete animation. So the woman's mouth is down. So here's what she didn't know. Her father had cancer, and her father lived with her, and they went through hospice in her property, the whole bit. And every day his one joy was to wheel his wheelchair out to the garden, because she worked in her garden all day. And right out by the garden was 3 little statues, and guess what? You guessed it, of the 3 little pigs. And that's where he spent the last couple months of his life, was watching her work in the garden. And how else, right? So that's how I'm going to end my beautiful story today, and my 10 tips and 2 stories. This is Jeannie Lynch. I've so enjoyed bringing this work to you. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. If I'm missing something that you would like to add to my ethic list, if you've had a good reading, a bad reading, I think all that conversation we can all learn from. Do you agree? Have a nice day. Thanks again for watching. Namaste.